So, good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Roxanne J. Persaud. I represent the 19th Senate District, and that district covers parts of Brooklyn and Queens. In my district, it's a nationally known spot for human trafficking, and today we're going to be talking about human trafficking. The Penn Track is a notorious area that's the scourge of our community. It's an area controlled by hundreds of pimps who force predominantly women and girls, very young girls, into the life that they should not be leading. All in plain view. Despite that, they're walking near schools, they're walking near housing developments, they're walking near senior developments, scantily clad, without respect for the community. Um, so, this area has been active since in the 1980s. A few weeks ago, we had a discussion that comprised of the Brooklyn DA's office, NYPD, members of the FBI, OTDA, other social service agencies, talking about what is it we need to do to eliminate trafficking in that particular area because it seems to have grown. During the COVID era, and that was not that long ago, there was an increase in trafficking in that area. Despite people being at home, there was an increase in trafficking in that area. Didn't matter what time of day, what time of night you walked out, they were people walking the streets and they were purchasers, right? And it's also a business area, and the businesses complain about the trafficking there. And what we've also found is that some of their workers are the ones who are patronizing the people who are walking the streets. So, for us to eliminate that, we need to make sure that the businesses are working with us. As chair of social services, I've convened stakeholder meetings, and we'll continue to do that. Last year, Senator Cooney and I met with the Trucker Association of New York, the state DOT, the state police, social service agencies, and we've done these conversations over and over. And no matter what we've done, it seems as though we're not eliminating trafficking. It is something that it's a serious offense. And so the key takeaway that we've gotten every time we've convened is that early education is key. We have to make sure we're educating the communities. We have to ensure that we're doing PSAs across the board so that people can become aware of what trafficking is. There are many people who do not understand what trafficking is. They'll talk about people in the community will say, "Oh, I saw these girls, they're just walking the streets and, that's the lifestyle they want to live," without realizing that I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, "I want to work in that industry." I don't think that happens. But there are people who think that people are making a conscious decision to be trafficked. And so we have to work to eliminate that. And today I'm proud to partner with TAT, formerly Truckers Against Trafficking, and the Trucking Association of New York to present this exhibition that we're having today. And it's the Freedom Drivers Project here in Albany. And we've also partnered with DOT, and DOT will be outside also, so that we can continue to have the conversation. What we're trying to do is, again, is education. We've invited schools across Albany to bring their students to see the exhibition. We've invited all legislators and their staff. We've invited as many people as possible to come to see so that they can understand when we're talking about trafficking, what trafficking is, and why the importance of us eliminating trafficking from our communities. And I'll end with this. I was at a school a few weeks ago, and I visited many of the schools across my district. And these young students, they were talking about the things that they're doing and the activities that they were planning. And a young girl said to me, "Oh, do you know about trafficking?" This was a middle school student. She said, "Do you know about trafficking?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Coincidentally, we're talking about this and we're doing these things." And she says, "I want my school to have a project so that the community can understand about trafficking." Because she said someone in her family had been trafficked. And that's how she found out about what trafficking is. No young person should be at home and finding out that, oh my gosh, there's somebody being trafficked. Another person also. her niece was trafficked by someone who was living in the home with them. In the home with them. Think of this. You've invited someone into your home, it's a relative who was staying with them. You've invited them into your home. You're all sitting at the same dinner table. You're all having this family conversation. But when the mother leaves, the person who she invited to be in their home started trafficking her daughter, grooming her daughter. And the daughter didn't realize it until it was too late. Until the girl disappeared, and they're like, where did she go? And someone says, oh, we saw her. We were where? And that's how they found out that the person that they had invited into their home was trafficking their daughter. So we have to have these conversations, and that's why education is key. Today, I'm also joined with my colleagues, Senator Webb, who's the chair of Women's Issues, and Senator, where is he? Senator Myrie. He's right. I know, I'm looking like, I thought he was on my right. And Senator Myrie. Senator Myrie and I are from Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, we have that problem. Doesn't matter where you turn. The Penn track may be the national conversation on trafficking when it comes to the city of New York, but trafficking is occurring in all of our communities. And so now I will turn it over to our partners who've been working with us. I'll start with Brandy, who is representing TAT today, and is going to talk about the history of the Freedom Drivers Project. So thank you again for joining us. Brandy?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. As Senator Persaud said, my name is Brandy Belton, and I am the director of mobile exhibits. So I actually travel all over the U.S. and Canada with this mobile exhibit to bring just some more education and awareness on what human trafficking is. And since 2009, TAT has proudly worked alongside the transportation industry to combat human trafficking, registering over 2.5 million professional individuals that were trained with our materials that we offer free of charge that is industry specific to those people. And then people often ask us why the transportation industry or why bus drivers. And there are quite a lot of reasons why, but those professionals tend to be in places where traffickers are, where they may take advantage of a victim of human trafficking. And that is why we went to those industries. They are the eyes and ears of our nation's roadways, and professional drivers are also trained to be vigilant alongside with the travel plaza and bus terminal employees, where they, like I said, find themselves intersecting with these victims. And who better to train to recognize the signs of this crime, and who better to equip and empower on how to effectively report it? So I have a story for you that happened in January of 2015, where an RV had pulled into a Virginia truck stop and police were immediately called out to the scene. And when they arrived, the story had made headlines. It was a horrific story, but one call had been made which brought law enforcement out to that RV, which they in turn pulled someone out of that RV and actually interviewed her to find that horrible things had happened to her. She had been taken from her home, 2 weeks prior. And the things that had happened, where she was beaten, she was raped, she was deprived of food, she was sold on Craigslist through ads there where men were coming out to this RV, to this truck stop to purchase her. And she was dying of, malnutrition. And if it wasn't for that call from that driver making that call, doctors reported that she would have died. And Kevin Kimmel is the driver who made that call, helping to bring her help, getting law enforcement out there. And we couldn't do this work without strong partnerships within our industry, also law enforcement and government agencies and the trucking associations of New York and Senator Persaud's office, who have been two valuable partners in reaching members of the trucking, bus, and energy industry throughout New York State. The Trucking Association of New York has partnered with TAT for years, providing us multiple opportunities to speak to members within the companies about our free training, and they've also successfully co-hosted coalition builds with the New York State Department of Transportation and TAT. And they are actively spreading awareness of TAT and our message throughout the New York State trucking industry. We are also grateful to Senator Persaud's office and for her leadership on the issue, including sponsoring the Senate Bill S2399A, which would add New York to the company of 15 other states across the country that have passed legislation to equip every student at the commercial driver's license school level with life-saving training to identify and report human trafficking. If New York passes S2399A, other states will follow. Uh-oh, that's not mine. Other states will follow and then lead. So imagine the exponential effect that will result in, and how many more victims that can be recovered and recognized and recovered. So today, like we said, we have our Freedom Drivers Project outside, down at the end of the block. Sorry for the rain, but it's out there for you to come and take a tour of, which just gives you another bird's eye view into the life of what a victim of human trafficking may have endured. They have artifacts from the survivors of human trafficking along with those stories. And then also some stories from drivers who have made the call using our training materials to help recover victims and aid in law enforcement to do that. So whether it's through legislation like the S2399A or through awareness and education efforts such as Youth and Transportation Safety Month, we are proud to work alongside Tanny and Senator Persaud's office and the New York transportation industry to combat human trafficking throughout the Senate and in reaching industry members, caregivers, and youth throughout the state with potentially life-saving information. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And I'll take this out of your way.
Thank you. Yes, we did pass the legislation. We also added it here in New York, the DOT to the Interagency Task Force, which is a real plus for us. Now I'd like to invite Zach Miller from Tanny to give remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. These are very difficult stories to listen to, but they're important. This is how we enact change. At the core, the Trucking Association of New York is a safety organization, and we are proud to stand with partners like TAT in the fight against human trafficking. As the eyes and ears of America's roadways, trucking professionals are uniquely positioned to serve as boots on the ground, identifying warning signs and helping stop trafficking at the source and saving lives. We are grateful for Senator Persaud's tireless leadership and advocacy on this issue and strongly support her initiative to ensure all CDL entrants in New York receive TAT's life-saving training. As we mark Youth on Transportation Month this year, there is added urgency to expanding this training. With the New York metropolitan area anticipated to host millions of visitors during the World Cup and America at 250 celebrations, equipping commercial drivers to recognize and report human trafficking is not just timely, it is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. And now we'll call on Senator Webb, Chair of the Women's Issues Committee.
Thank you, Senator Persaud, and of course, Senator Myrie, and our partners from TAT, and of course, the Truckers Association of New York. So, again, I want to extend my appreciation to Senator Persaud for her leadership in this particular space. as the chair of women's issues, a lot of the issues we have tried to address around public safety, human trafficking continues to be a top challenge. In 2023, myself, along with my colleagues here in the legislature, advocated to establish a statewide task force on addressing the unfortunate growing trend of missing and murdered BIPOC women and girls. And so, one of the things that we found in the work with respect to that task force is that unfortunately, human trafficking rates are on the rise, but especially for BIPOC women, they are disproportionately victims of trafficking. 92% of the girls in Los Angeles in their juvenile justice system identified as trafficking victims, they were Black. This statistic is horrible, and most certainly it requires us all to work together. Here in New York, as I often state, we are a high tourism state. We also know that this issue not only impacts New York City, it also impacts our entire state. We know that unfortunately, that if we were to poll people in our circle and ask them this question of, do you know someone that has been a victim of trafficking? Unfortunately, we would find a number of folks do know someone that was trafficked. And a lot of the work that we've been doing in our committee is literally aimed to raise awareness about what human trafficking is, how to provide resources for those who have been impacted. In addition to that, we were able to do legislation specifically around awareness by establishing signage at truck stops that if someone sees someone that's a victim of human trafficking or is a victim of human trafficking themselves, they have a number to call to get immediate support and assistance. But we know that more needs to happen in this way. And again, I want to thank Senator Persaud for her leadership on this issue. We know that awareness is paramount. Prevention is integral in raising awareness. And it's also important for folks to understand that human trafficking happens even within circles that aren't just strangers, but with people you may know, whether it's a neighbor, a family member, a number of folks that we have worked with who are advocates in this space have shared stories, many that were shared today, where it was someone that they knew and it took place over an extended period of time. And by the time they realized what happened to them, it was too late. So again, I think this work is very important. I know in addition to the BIPOC Missing and Murdered Women and Girls Task Force, there's an intra-agency task force here in New York to address human trafficking. And again, we need all of our partners at the table really to address the systemic public safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Webb. You know, I spoke about the school that I visited. What I failed to say that we also immediately had the school partner with TAT so that they can work with the youth there, so that they can have the information that they need. We're also making sure that we're working with DOT and receiving from them posters that we're giving out throughout our communities. You know, at the library, at the bodegas in our community, the supermarkets, everywhere possible, we are putting up those signage talking about human trafficking. The limitation we have is that there are not in enough languages to make sure everyone is reached. And so we're working on that. Senator Webb, I failed to say to you that someone reached out to her saying the signage should be amended to have sign language. That should have help in sign language. So someone going in there, seeing it, they will see the sign that says help, and they'll know that's the number to call. So instead of them and giving them the TTTY line for them to call, and so people will ask for other things than that. So we're pleased that it's a work in progress. It's never done until trafficking is eliminated. I'd now like to ask Senator Myrie to give some remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start by thanking Senator Persaud for her leadership, not just on today's initiative, but on this issue. It is really important just to talk about this. This is an uncomfortable thing for a lot of people. And instead of having it happen in the shadows, Senator Persaud has been at the forefront of ensuring that we as a conference talk about this. The folks in her community talks about it, and joined with Senator Webb in her chairmanship of the Women's Issues Committee, ensuring that we do not forget about the most vulnerable people in our communities. I chair the Codes Committee in the Senate, which is responsible for a lot of our criminal laws, a lot of our criminal penalties. And we have taken up a number of issues and bills in this area throughout this legislative session. But one of the things that's really important to remember is that that is an after-the-fact solution. After the harm has already been done, the law holds people accountable for trafficking. But the prevention is just as important. And that is what today is about education, about awareness, about ensuring that this is an all-of-the-above approach to eradicating trafficking in our entire state of New York. So I stand behind all of the women that are leading on this issue and appreciate, again, the opportunity to join my voice in this chorus of ensuring that we end this in New York for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Myrie. We keep talking about trafficking as though it's only a women's issue, but it's not. It is not. More and more young boys are being trafficked. People prey on runaways. So it's across the board. It's not one gender. I'd now like to call on our final speaker, Senator Ramos, who is the chair of the Labor Committee, to give remarks.
Thank you so much, Senator Persaud, for your leadership on this issue and bringing us together. I'm New York State Senator Jessica Ramos, chair of the Labor Committee, but lifelong resident of the district I represent, where I have seen human trafficking take place my entire life. And that happens in the form of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Senator Persaud is right. Both men and women, non-binary people, all people are susceptible to trafficking, especially when government leaves so many voids for bad actors to take advantage of the most vulnerable among us. In my district, there is a very infamous corridor called Roosevelt Avenue right underneath the 7 train, and we have struggled over the past 50 plus years to curb the amount of sex work and labor trafficking that takes place there. And the federal government plays a very, very big role here because both the lack of work permits allows for people to prey on undocumented immigrants who are desperate to provide for their families and have their passports taken away. They're forced to pay back the people who helped them cross the border. Their families back home get threatened. There are all sorts of ways that the women who are being trafficked along Roosevelt Avenue are taken advantage of. But it's also about figuring out how we can strengthen RICO laws at the federal level and the supports at the state level so that we can bring so many of the transnational criminal organizations who are leading this trafficking that takes place and bring them to accountability and bring them to justice. I think it's unfortunate that, at least on the federal level, this is largely in the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security. For a district like mine, it's very difficult when Homeland Security is working in tandem with ICE, which brings along a lot of fear into communities. And we really, I think, need the Department of Justice to step up and actually be able to investigate, using the databases that are available, the high frequency of financial transactions, especially, well, in my district, we're about to see a casino take place along Roosevelt Avenue, which is only going to exacerbate these issues. And that has us very, very worried. So thank you to the Trucking Association, to my colleagues, and to everyone who is here to speak out against this. People are trafficked, even as nail salon workers, as construction workers, for all sorts of different places where there are employers that want to take advantage of people who think that because they don't speak English or because they're undocumented, they don't have any rights. And we're here to say that in New York, everyone does. And that, I think, is a very powerful statement. And we need more people to know that we're trying to do the right thing and that they should be able to be empowered to report the violence committed against them. Thank you.
So thank you, Senator Ramos. So as you've heard from all of my colleagues, the importance of us working together so that we eliminate trafficking from our communities. If we sit back and do nothing, the problem will continue to grow, and we have no intention of that happening. So I want to again say thank you to Tat and Tanny for partnering with us to make sure education first is key, and also to making sure that we're working to eliminate trafficking from our communities across the entire state of New York. People don't realize in rural communities it's something that's hidden because people are not seeing it, but it's happening more and more. In the urban communities, it's there. We're seeing it. It does not trafficking does not discriminate based on a zip code. It does not. Wealthy people are trafficking people. Poor people are trafficking people because they want to, elevate their lot in life. So trafficking does not discriminate based on ethnic background, socioeconomic, it does not. Education level, it does not. Every community has some sort of trafficking. And so it's our responsibility to continue working to eliminate trafficking from our communities. So again, I want to thank everyone for participating with us today and hope that you encourage people to come out and see the display so that you can have firsthand knowledge of what is happening when we're talking about trafficking. Thank you, everyone.